Hello everyone, I have one more beautiful game to show played by Rashid Nezhmetdinov. This time he was facing Lev Polugaevsky and this was played in 1958. Nezhmetdinov had the black pieces in this game. Let's check it out. Starts with d4, knight f6, c4 and d6. This is the old Indian defense. Knight c3 and e5 immediately. And it's okay, even if white were to capture on e5, and black recaptures and trades queens, this is okay for black. White gains no great advantage. Simply knight c6, bishop g5, bishop e6. This is all playable for both sides, and white has nothing special here. So after e5, simply e4. E takes d4 and queen takes d4. Knight c6 and queen d2 and g6 now. b3 to counter the dark squared bishop, bishop g7 and bishop b2. Black castles. Bishop to d3 and knight g4 here. One idea is to free the h4 square, the path to the h4 square for the queen, but also knight can come on e5. Knight f3 is possible, which would lead to, let's say, knight ge5 and bishop e2. Knight takes, bishop takes, knight d4. This is playable. However, knight ge2 was chosen, which is also fine, and queen h4. There was a way to gain slight advantage by knight ce5. That's also interesting. And after bishop c2, then play queen h4. This would have been slightly better for black. But anyway, queen h4 immediately. And here, knight g3 was played, which is not the best way to continue this position, because it allows a very sharp attack. Nezhmetdinov did not play it, but there is f5 here right in the position, and f4 is a major threat. So after, let's say, e takes f5, there's knight b4 first, bishop goes to b1, and now bishop f5, bishop into, there's rook a e8 check, a Zwischenzug, knight c2 e2, and bishop into b2. If queen into b2, then you have simply g into f5. f4 is again a major threat. And knight d3, of course, is an even stronger one. Queen b1 preventing, but f4. Knight e4 and f3 even, busting open white's position. And after bishop into b2, if let's say bishop into g4, you have bishop into a1. And black is up the exchange. This is completely winning. But after knight e3, knight ge5 was played, which does not capitalize on white's mistake. White castles now, and now f5. And this is a bit different. White has already castled. f3, strengthening e4, and bishop h6, attacking the queen. And queen goes to d1. Here it would be quite interesting to play bishop e3 check, and after king h1, then play f4 and cement that bishop there. There could be a lot of pressure on the king side. But after queen d1, f4 was played immediately by Nezhmetdinov. And it's a little different here. The bishop is staring at the pawn versus being cemented by the pawn. Knight g goes to e2 and g5 even, which is fine. Not the best, but it's okay. Nezhmetdinov wants to attack on the king side. Knight d5, g4 even, g3, f takes, h takes, and queen h3. Here, f4 was played, threatening, of course, the knight. But a very nice move here. And here, of course, we have to be careful. Black does not have knight f3 check, because king f2 simply. And after queen h2, king e3 is fine because of rook h1, and the bishop is hanging on h6. White's king is actually secure on e3, believe it or not. After f4, the best reply is bishop e6, and that's what Nezhmetdinov played. Of course, f takes e5 is very bad in this case because of bishop takes d5, and now there is no guardian of the e3 square, so bishop c1 is forced. You have knight into e5, bishop into h6, queen into h6, knight f4, and now bishop goes to c6, and black is up a pawn. That's the thing. So after bishop, there's some other ideas were that bishop into e5 was an idea. This is perfectly fine. You have knight into e5 and now king f2, queen h2 and king e3, and again rook h1 will save the day. Knight into c7 was not a good idea here because of bishop into f4. Again, the e3 square is undefended. If rook takes, let's say if g takes, then simply g3, that's too strong. If knight takes, then queen into g3, that's also very strong. So if rook takes, you have rook takes, and now let's say bishop into e5, there's knight into e5. If let's say knight into a8, you have rook f6, sorry, not rook f6, this is bad, you have rook f7. Knight f3 is a threat, the knight on a8 is trapped, the white's pieces are not very active, black is doing very well here. So after bishop e6, bishop c2 was played. Although bishop into e5 was actually have maintained equality, this worsens black's position because this allows bishop into d5. Let's say after queen into d5 and rook f7, there's bishop into e5 and d into e5, and this is quite good for black because you will bust open the king side and the attack should likely be successful. However, rook f7 was played immediately, and this allows a defense of bishop into e5 here. And this is a bit different. Here you'll have knight into e5 and king f2. Again, rook h1, that same idea which we'd seen before. The king going to e3 and then and rook h1 will save the day. Because the queen will have no squares. However, king f2 was played immediately after rook f7, and this is a bit different. There is a knight still on e5 and on c6. So here queen h2, king to e3, bishop into d5, c into d5, and knight b4. a3 would be fine. It's still slightly better for black, but it forces the knight to go away. Knight into c2, queen to c2, and it's slightly better for black. However, white underestimated the power of having an extra knight in the position. And after knight b4 played rook h1. And this allows a beautiful sacrifice. I will ask you to pause the video here and use the hint that I've given to find out Nezhmetdinov's next move. He played rook into f4, not bothering even to grab the rook on h1. He's simply looking to open the position and attack the white king. So rook into h2. There's nothing much else, and rook f3 check. It's a double check from the bishop and from the rook, and the only place for the king is king d4, and bishop g7 now. We'll go for the king from this diagonal. The king is stuck. If let's say knight c3 to try to perhaps sacrifice the white queen for the rook, there's simply rook af8, and the king is still stuck in the center. This would be quite good. But white played a4, and this just allows a mating net to form. First c5, d takes c6 answer, and bishop b takes c6. c5 is a threat. Bishop d3 was tried, looking to go to the c3 square with the king, but knight e takes d3. It's a discovered check. King c4 and d5 check. E takes, c takes, king b5, and I'm sure you can see what's happening now. Rook to b8, king to a5, and knight c6 check. Well, there's only one square left for the king, and at this point white resigned in a beautiful victory for Rashid Nezhmetdinov. And it all boils down to this fact that Polugaevsky missed the fact that there was an extra knight in the position, and he went king f2 and rook h1 without going for bishop into e5 first. Because if he goes for bishop into e5 and distracts this knight, there is no knight b4, there's no mating net, and the queen sacrifice would never work here. Queen sacrifice could never work here in this position if we were to continue with queen h2 and king e3, bishop into d5, c into d5. That would not work here. You needed a knight on e5 and on b4. That's what makes chess so beautiful. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you soon for the next game.